Okay, what's up, South Florida? It's me, John D. Villarreal, here on the John D. Villarreal Radio Show on 1210 AM Miami. The man, the only station where you are the man. Now, we talked last hour with Professor Lou. He was amazing. We talked about AI. We talked about education. We talked about venture capital. We talked about some politics. It was fun. It was fast and furious. We're going to shift gears in this, and we appreciate him coming on here. Absolutely appreciate his time and expertise. But I'm also bringing some new expertise right now. We've got big news this week about the U.S. and President Trump pulling troops out of Syria. And we also have some other political news that we'll get to in terms of Warren leading the Democratic presidential primary now, in my opinion, some of the Trump rallies, things like that. But I really want to focus on, and I also want to talk about the NBA-China issue and the China trade deal. So we'll touch on all that later. But we have some expertise here. This is a gentleman, Hazem, who has actually studied here at Johns Hopkins, and he was one of the scholars, and you can talk about and tee that up, your background, from Syria. So, I mean, I'm telling you, this is someone that is very, very recently in the country, has a lot of expertise, and I really want to understand what's going on. So why don't you talk a little bit about yourself and kind of tee up the situation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hazem. I'm from Aleppo, Syria. I'm originally a pharmacist and worked since 2013 with multiple NGOs and UN agencies during the humanitarian response inside Syria and later on in Somalia. So I came here to Johns Hopkins to study for a Master of Public Health to improve my expertise when I return back to my country, where unfortunately now it's getting more and more messier.
It's a tough deal, and you know, my wife talks a lot, and she's Israeli from Nazareth, and that's pretty close. I mean, all those countries, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, everything's pretty close over there. You know, Israel itself, some people said, I'm gonna get it a little bit wrong, size of like Rhode Island or Connecticut, you know, one of these small countries there, states here in America. The landmass, I mean, I remember flying into Tel Aviv and driving up to, I wasn't driving, but I was being driven up to Nazareth, and it was like 2.5 hours, and that's basically half the country right there. So everything's very, very close, and it's really unfortunate because the history, the region is incredible, the people are incredible, the food and all that, not that that really matters, but I mean, it's so good to eat, right? We're off to eat. It's incredible, but I mean, I mean, it's so simple and sounds kind of silly, but I just don't understand why people can't get along these days, because these fights have been going on for literally thousands of years. Set the stage. What are the different people? A lot of people, when you know, especially Americans, I think, you know, they may understand some of it. We're there, and maybe this person's. I mean, a lot of times, like who we think is good and who we think is not as good, you know, like changes pretty rapidly. Can you at least tell us, like, to the extent that you're able to, I don't want to put you in any bad spots either, but, you know, can you talk about the Assad government? Can you talk about the Kurds, Turkey, you know, Iran's influence, Israel's influence? It seems like everybody's over there. What is going on? What's the state of play?
It is like you said, everybody is there. So originally what happened in 2011 is that we had a dictatorship for nearly 30 years, and the country was moving forward. Things were getting better, economy was getting better, and people thought that it's about time to get our rights, where freedom of speech would become essential, justice would be done, and the order of law would be more present. Peaceful protests started, smaller and smaller, mainly in the rural area. Of course, there's no one point where you can say, oh, this is it. Of course, there was a starting fire where it's spread out everywhere from Daraa, which is a small town in the south. But in a sense, many socio-economic situations led to the peaceful protests. The regime of al-Assad responded strongly and heavily, killing people from the first day of these peaceful movements, and then it escalated. People started to mobilize, militias started to create, where you see multiple militia, because they thought, oh, we are going to defend our land, which is protected by the international humanitarian law. Then it got messier. This is where everybody started pouring into the country. Suddenly we found ISIS at our doors, jihadists coming and declaring that they want to create their own.
Who was pushing them? Was that Iran, or who was behind ISIS in Syria?
Different
Your
versions.
speculation.
My speculation is that even it's the regime to create let's say a pretext for the harsh attacks against the civilians. They wanted to say, oh, we have terrorists here rather than peaceful demonstrations. This was the major thing that they wanted. And they have done that previously in multiple years. Of course, it's not known here because, as you said, is that it's a little bit far from the US, but unfortunately it happened multiple times. So we knew that it was going in that way, but the extent and the level of it took another dimension. Anyhow, then in 2013, when al-Assad was on the verge of losing, he brought Russia and said, oh, I'm losing control of my country, I need help. Of course, as a government, he is allowed. He can ask any other country because he's the government of the country.
Head of state.
Exactly. So he asked the forces to come. While the world was, of course, a little bit of, the whole international community did not know what should be done in that sense. We were, as civil society, we were pushing to say, this is our pretext, this is what's happening inside Syria, please help us in responding. Even war after World War II has laws. This has been broken systematically in this context. With Russia becoming part of it and Iran, it now became an international conflict. And with ISIS, of course, and the terrorists, it's all became a quagmire.
So let me ask you that. I mean, it sounds silly again, but what are people fighting about? Like, is this just a proxy war, maybe like Vietnam was or something like that? Is there something to fight over? I mean, obviously human rights, everything like that, but I'm talking, it's not like, I don't think we're not talking about oil there or anything like that. And again, these may sound like silly, basic questions, but I mean, I think that we have to set the stage here for South Florida so we can try to get our hands around this from an expert like you. Like, what is everybody fighting over?
It's, as I said, it's different levels. The strategic position of Syria has made it a very, let's say, a target for all the international law. Even Russia, by the way, the only maritime port outside of Prussia is in Tartus, is in Syria.
Wow.
This is the only one after the World War II, after the collapse of the Soviet Union and everything. The only one is in Tartus. So the Russians have invested through the years in that government. They were even like before with the father, the Hafez, he was much linked with the Soviets at the time. So all in all, strategically there are resources in Syria, which there are many speculations that there may be newfound gas in the shores of Syria. There's speculations about it. There is oil inside Syria, and definitely it's part of the conflict. So it's not one thing. You cannot just say this is the thing. It's multiple things that are going on.
And again, I got to be careful bringing my wife in here. I need a happy marriage. But I mean, so I won't even use her. But I mean, let me put it this way. Of course, there's resources in Syria. I'm not trying to say that. What I'm saying is, sometimes when there's this discussion of like, oh, we're defending Saudi Arabia, or we're doing this, or we're going into Iraq, or you're going for the oil, or you're doing this or doing that, potentially like, but I don't think there's that conversation here. It sounds like the land is so strategic right next to Iraq and Russia and everything like that, that it seems like it's human rights space with the regime, it's strategic base, and it's also maybe potentially with ISIS and stuff, religious space. Is that correct?
Later on, yes. Later on. What happened is that it started, like I said, with peaceful movement, with people of Syria starting to want more.
Was that part of some of the Arab Spring thing?
Exactly. Oh, okay. Of course, we were part. So it started in Tunisia, it moved to Egypt, then Yemen, Libya, and Syria. So all in all, the whole population, like the whole Arab world, wanted better future. Let's say we wanted a better future for our children, because we knew that it would be, and dictatorship have ruled us for a long time in those areas. The thing about this Middle East is that it's all about balances. It's all about powers coming up and powers going down. The US has invested a lot in that area. Russia has tried to an influence. There's a long rivalry between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Israel is part of all of these discussions, the Palestinians issue. So this area, unfortunately, if you look at it, like you said, that it's a long, thousands of years of build up that led to this thing. It's not a direct thing you can say, oh, point A to point B. It is not point A to point B. It's layers and layers and layers of complexity. Unfortunately, it cannot be explained. It's never, unfortunately.
No, it's like I said. I was going to remind again. I'm threatening to get him in trouble here. It reminds me of my wife. You know, like something comes up. It could be the smallest thing. Like, hey, I want to wear this shirt. No, I'd rather have you wear this shirt. And all of a sudden, like every single discussion from 7 years ago comes up. You know what I mean? Or whatever many years. I mean, so it's kind of like that. It's like the littlest thing gets everything else involved in it, and it seems like nothing's ever fully resolved.
Exactly, and unfortunately, it will not. If people don't, it's unfortunately, like I said, it's part of the history. You know, empires come up, they'll go down, and everything. The Middle East and the whole Mediterranean basin has been, you know, thousands of years ago. So religion started there, politics started there, the Roman Empire, the Persian. It's a long history. But here now, this is simple, for at least for us from our perspective. It's a simple want from us as people to take our own decision by ourselves. That's the main thing.
No, I get that. That makes a lot of sense. My question is this. You know, from an American's perspective, President Trump, part of what he was elected on was getting us out of a lot of these foreign wars. I mean, we've spent trillions of dollars, and so many American lives have been lost. And same as far as, you know, people in other countries, Syrians and Iraqis and Afghanis and etc. Right? So it's not just Americans, but it's certainly from the leader of America, you have to think about all of that, but certainly the American component of that. And it's so funny, and he has been drawing down from other conflicts. Thank goodness we're not in any major conflicts right now, and I think he's resisted, and I think rightfully so, military engagement with Iran, at least directly and stuff. I don't think that could be good for pretty much anyone right now. Now, what's so interesting to me is so many of the, not to make a left-right thing, but so many of the people and the liberals here in America on the left were like, hey, you know, these wars, we got to get out of these wars. They were against the Iraq war. And so now you have a president that's actually drawing down, and they're still criticizing him. So that's kind of like the political thing. But I want to know from you, we got about 5 minutes left in this segment, do you think America should be in Syria? I mean, we're seeing images on our television of, you know, atrocities that Erdogan and the Turkish military may be doing. I'm not saying they're not. I'm just not there. I don't know. I'm just seeing some of these news reports, and I've been in finals, so I haven't been able to really focus too much on what's going on out there. Do you think America should be there? Are we going to do? How long do we have to be there? I mean, in other words, like, what happens if America pulls out? What do you think is going to happen? Do you think America should be there? And if we should be there, how do we be there? How should we be there? And how do you solve any of this stuff?
It's definitely the withdrawal of any military force out of Syria is good. Because unfortunately war never brings peace. Unfortunately, war is bringing more killing, and civilians are taking the burns of it. And no matter whatever military force now inside Syria, they have all committed human rights issues. The basic issues is that with the American force, the problem that's happening right now is that America has been now in Syria for quite a while, for many years. And the abrupt pullout would create a void. This void of power will be filled by somebody. And this is the issue about whenever the US tries to enter into something and pull out, is that the abruptness of pulling out. The US has pushed itself as the big man in the world since after World War II. The whole competition all over with Russia and everything. The issue is that with major deployments and the major things about it, the US with Obama before, and then later on with Trump, has not taken a decisive decision about what would be done inside Syria. That always indecisiveness has put us in a very bad situation, even us as civil society, because while sometimes Obama will threaten, they will pull out. You remember the red line discussion?
Oh yeah.
Exactly. So it's not going after these things. So the US has been like, I want to be there, but I don't want to be there. That created a void which was filled by Russia and Iran and Turkey. They are now the troika that are deciding whatever happening inside Syria.
Is Israel a factor in this at all?
Definitely, but not to that extent.
Okay.
They want to protect the northern borders of it. So they have legitimate political aspect to that, but not interfering. Their major issue is Iran. And Iran being sending forces, ground forces, while Russia has provided strategic and air force to the Syrian government, the Syrian regime, Iran provided the military, the on-ground forces that are fighting. And that has been very worrisome to Israel, and that's why they started bombing inside Syria with air force and everything, the Iranian points, that's not to allow the Iranian influence to reach them.
Okay, so let's say that the U.S. pulls out, as they have, and what do you think happens? What's your prediction for what happens to Syria, number one? And number two, how do we get peace? We got about 2 minutes left in this segment.
Unfortunately, it's
peace is tough, huh?
We don't know, even ourselves. Unfortunately, the one thing that we have been keep repeating and pushing a lot as Syrian civil society, we want our decision in our own hands. Now the decision is never in our hands. It's between Russia, Turkey, Iran, and the US. We as people, what can we do? If Russia will fight with the US now on Syria,
too much power.
Exactly. And this is where we cannot resist. We don't know how to resist these politics. Do you understand? It's a huge forces that are fighting now on the land, and we can't do anything.
So let me ask you this, in wrapping up here. What, in your opinion, do the Syrian people want? And I'm not saying you speak for all Syrians or anything like that, but what do you think Syrians want? If you could wave a magic wand and get it right now, what do you think Syrians want from the U.S. at least?
Definitely pulling out is definitely something that is good, but when it pulls out, it should push everybody to go out. Iran, Russia, and everyone. Of course, that's possible, but diplomatically it can be done. You know, these balances of power, because Russia has proven time and again that they want to show themselves as a global power. So there is this tension. It's like here in the US between Democrats and Republican parties. It's always a balance of things.
Very, very interesting, fascinating discussion. Appreciate Hazem joining us here, who is obviously from Syria. You're listening to John D. Villarreal Radio Show on 1210 AM Miami, The Man, the only station where you are the man. Be right back.